Friends, hello! I feel like it's been so long. Welcome to my January reading wrap up. Before I get started talking about the 8 books that I read in January, yeah, it's been like 2 weeks since I uploaded a video, which is atypical for me. I did have my live show for Neuromancer last week, so go check that out if you didn't see it, talking about Neuromancer by William Gibson alongside the MS-DOS, Amiga, Apple II, Commodore 64 Neuromancer game from the 80s. So much fun. The podcast episode is out, the live show is out. So, yeah, go check it out. I really so appreciate all of the support on that. And before we get started, our next book club, game club pick that we will be, the podcast episode will come out at the end of March and we'll be talking about in a live show either at the end of March or beginning of April, is The Seven Moons of Molly Almeida. I would love if you joined along. It really, really means so much. So we'll have a podcast episode coming out talking about this in conjunction with Murdered Soul Suspect, talking about quests that go on in the afterlife. So that will be so much fun. You do not have to both read the book and play the game to get it. It's just kind of like comparative lit, talking about games critically alongside a book. So yeah, even if you're not a gamer, please join in. I would appreciate all of the support and I would love to hear your thoughts on this book. It'll be a first time read for me. So obviously a lot was going on in January in the world. So I did kind of get in a poor mental health space to record videos. Even though I'm no longer living in the US, it does deeply affect me both as just a human and a lover of people, a lover of immigrants, a lover of safety and well-being for everyone, as well as, obviously I would love to visit my friends and family in the US sometime in the future. And right now, I just have a feeling that that's not going to be possible. And I don't know if that's permanently not possible for me to see friends and family in the US again. So, yeah, deeply sad. And yeah, I just don't think it's a safe place to be. So, um, that happened, as well as like some health issues I was having. All good now, but yeah, a couple weeks there where I couldn't record. And yeah, so in the future I think I'll be looking into like batch recording, so that hopefully if I'm continuing to have health issues that it doesn't put me off like having videos at all for multiple weeks. So that's enough about me. Let's get into the books. There's 8 books that I read, and I'll be ranking them in order from my least favorite to my most favorite. The first one being Stephen Klein Vogue, which is Stephen Klein, the photographer, art director type of photographer. All of his pictures that have been in the Vogue magazine. I just got this on ebook, so I didn't get to flip through it or anything, and I was hoping that there would be some discussion of these photographs about the act of like art directing these photographs, but it was really just like the pictures and there was no commentary at all. So yeah, didn't really do anything for me. I think it was just like a coffee table book, and why it was made into an ebook. The photographs were still great, but there's just no reason why, if it wasn't already on your radar, why you need to check it out. The next one is a thriller, Close Your Eyes and Count to 10 by Lisa Unger. This was of the same vein as the Darcy Coates that I read, How Bad Things Can Get, where it is like about a Mr. Beast figure holding a competition on an island. And this one is supposed to be about a extreme hide and seek on this island. And my biggest issue with this book, why this is like my lowest of the books for this month, is the hide and seek that was hyped up as the premise of this book and throughout the book about like we're going to do hide and seek. Yeah, that didn't even happen until like 75% into the book, and it was like less than 2% of the book, I think, that was like actually about this hide and seek. Like it was really just like a non-issue, not important to the story at all. The things that were more important and I thought were interesting was like, whereas How Bad Things Can Get was kind of like a sympathetic look at this Mr. Beast type figure. This one really wasn't. That it was really more critical that he had these issues and controversies, scandals that were following him around during one of his previous events. Someone had disappeared, and there is like some shady financial stuff going on in the background. They think all the games are rigged. We also have this main character who's a mom who is like a social media person, and her kids convince her to like apply for this, and of course she immediately gets on. Really none of the characters did anything for me, which is okay in like a wild thriller. Like I love a wild premise for a thriller, but again, the premise was like not delivered upon. The game and competition was a non-factor to the story. Barely any page time dedicated to it. So, yeah, kind of a flop for me, and didn't really have any twist that I didn't see coming. And also, yeah, the game should have been fun, and it was like not even that it wasn't fun, but it just wasn't even there. Next is a book that sounded right up my alley, Youthjuice by Sathue. I love a weird skincare thriller type of book. I did love Rouge by Mona Awad, even though a lot of people that's kind of a controversial love, I think. I don't think a lot of people love that more than her other books. But this is about a young woman who is starting to work at like a luxury skincare brand, and very quickly it's like, what's going on? Why are all these interns for this company going missing? And very quickly, the skincare is about um, their blood being taken to be rejuvenating. This is, I think, supposed to be a thriller. It's supposed to be comedic. It just didn't really hit on any level for me. I thought it was kind of vapid and kind of a flop. Like it wasn't interesting. The plot wasn't interesting or unexpected. The characters weren't interesting. The themes were not explored. Like it just was like a big nothing burger to me, like truly vapid, just like nothing. So not good. The next book on my list, He's the Devil by Tobi Coventry. This is an arc that I got through Netgalley, and it is about having a new roommate, and maybe he's the devil. And not like the devil, but like a devil, a demon, something weird is going on. And what I did like about this is it's putting like a kind of unlikable character in a wild and feverish situation, which is something that I like. Sometimes I feel like it can be hard to write a compelling novel where it's like a really likable, root forable character in such a weird situation, and then having like an unlikable character in kind of a boring situation. Like this is kind of like a sweet spot, I think. Books like Woo Woo and Mother Thing, where there's something weird with the character going on, but there's also weird external circumstances. I liked that. And this one was like not laugh out loud funny, but had a sort of cheekiness to it that I found amusing. And I was getting the feeling throughout, like skeptical of how much this like weird, bizarre outside stuff was like actually happening to him in terms of like the devil convincing him to do things, or he felt like certain urges to do things. The devil roommate does weird things, like just like keep weird mushrooms in the fridge. Like there's just odd stuff going on, not so like overtly evil immediately. Definitely some like ideas that maybe people are getting kidnapped. And I had that American Psycho like unreliable narrator where you're like, is he actually doing these bad things that he's talking about him doing, or is this like just a facet of his like weird mentality? Because you do also get the feeling that before he had this devil roommate, that he also had a roommate that maybe he was inappropriate with, that his previous roommate, it's all the characters in this are gay men mostly. His older roommate wants nothing to do with him, even though they have been very close friends. So you are just like skeptical of the main character and the type of person he actually is outside of like this weird situation going on. So it wasn't like a must recommend, must read for me, but I was entertained, amused throughout. I thought that some of the horror scenes were done well, but I don't know what really could have been done differently for me to love it. I wasn't really taken off guard by anything or surprised by anything. So Yeah, just kind of like an average read for me, but definitely not bad by any means. The next one is Scorched Earth Beyond the Digital Age to a Post-Capitalist World by Jonathan Crary. I saw this on a Sunny Book Nook's like best nonfiction of the year, and it sounded really interesting to me. And I think that like the main takeaway for it from me, which like also I have to impart on you, and like thinking about like how poor my mental health was like affected by the stuff going on in the US, is that you get addicted to like reading news and seeing political things online, but that is like not actually being political yourself. Like you can't out read the news so much that you are impacting a positive change on the world. And so there's only so much use in like just reading all of that stuff and reading all the negativity and like letting it impact you versus like starting to actually build community in your neighborhood. And that is something that you see people in Minnesota and Minneapolis like really rose up to do, to take care of their neighbors, to take care of their community. And a lot of it is like very non-glamorous stuff, doing laundry for your neighbors. They have like these groups where they're doing laundry for their undocumented neighbors, and sometimes even documented neighbors, because like you know that they don't actually care if you're documented or not, but that's not what it's about. Making meals for people, just watching out for other people, to check in with people, like doing real material things for people in your community so that there is like solidarity there. That is so much more important than just reading all of the news. And so like this is like words for me to impact me as well. Like it's not like I'm sitting on a pedestal here, but do not let just reading stuff like overwhelm you and stop you from doing things that could actually impact positive change. So anyway, so back to the book. Things I found interesting in it, talking about UX design and eye tracking and the attention economy, thinking about things like that people want to believe that their like phones are listening to them, and like that is like kind of a more romantic idea of what's actually happening, in that your data is just being harvested and stolen and your attention's being stolen, and that there's very predictive things going on that are not just like listening to you personally. And yeah, just thinking about how much like web design is meant to just like keep you locked in and keep your attention locked in. Other things I want to like look into more and think about more, they're talking about hyper color, synthetic color, like really bright, overly saturated, again, like attention economy stuff. It was even drawing a line from like the first business empires that were like capturing synthetic coloring to like weapon manufacturers today. It was crazy. And just thinking about the natural way of things, like how Twilight was like the one time where you could like slowly watch colors drain out of the day. Like it was just like a romantic idea to me, thinking about the role of color, and yeah, not making like a moral judgment on how much color we should or should not have, but just thinking about the ways that a lot of things are designed to be like overly stimulating and to keep your body like excited all the time. Things like bright colors, bright sounds, the way that Instagram and the algorithm, like it just is meant to like keep you there and stimulated over and over. Easier to get people to get mad about things, easier to get people to buy things. So just like thinking about those things and like the way that things are done to emotionally manipulate you for capitalist reasons. And I was stressing how important face-to-face interactions are, that it's in like the capitalist best interest to keep everyone separate and not face-to-face, and to convince you that online interactions are a pure substitute for the real thing, and that it keeps people from mobilizing together and from making community. So yeah, it all links back to building real community outside of the internet. Next book in my list is Catherine House by Elisabeth Thomas. This I saw was like kind of a controversial read, that there's like some high ratings but a lot of low ratings, like not a popular consensus book at all, which is wild to me because I thought this book was so good. I really enjoyed this. It's about like a weird quasi university. It's like not a real university, but it is a school that people apply to after high school and that a lot of famous people and influential people have come from. But this school is so weird, like bizarre. It is like a co-ed school. For some reason I was thinking it was like an all-girl school from the cover, etc. But no, it's a co-ed school, and these kids, I mean, they're not kids, they're teenagers, young adults, are drinking and having sex and doing drugs all the time. But they also are like not allowed to have phones or photos from home. Like it's a very isolating environment. The school is weird. They are studying this like vague thing called plasma there and doing weird kind of alchemical science experiments with it, and only some of the kids are concentrating in that, and everyone else there knows that this plasma stuff is a big deal and a part of why the school is so important. However, they like it's so secretive, they don't know anything about it. And the main character that we're following is she doesn't really know what she wants. She's kind of just went here because she had nothing to at home to come from or to stay with. So she's just kind of like given all things up and is kind of like an empty vessel. But I still found her so compelling that it wasn't like she was just like this boring Mary Sue empty vessel. She was interesting and made interesting choices. She was curious about some things, got lackadaisical about others. Like I just found it a very arresting and immersive environment to be in. And this is like exactly what I want from like a weird campus novel. I really enjoyed this. And I think that if you were on the fence about reading this because there's so many low reviews, if you like a weird book at all, and if you like a campus novel at all, I highly recommend it. It is like vague and ambiguous. I loved that. I did not want any more answers than what it gave us. And yeah, just such a winner to me. The next one, also such a huge surprise in how much I loved it, was Letters to the Purple Satin Killer by Joshua Chaplinsky. This one was fascinating. It is a epistolary novel. It's all letters that are written to this serial killer who is in jail and then prison. Like the letters are from different eras, that they're from whenever he was first arrested, whenever he's awaiting trial, post trial, on death row, and you never hear his side of things. You get like a little excerpt at the beginning that's like about what the crimes were, and they are vile, violent, horrible things. And then the rest of it are just letters that were sent to him in prison. And you get to follow different storylines. Like, oh, some people write to him a lot, like his mom, an ex-girlfriend, a person who actually escaped from him. And then there's like fangirls of him. There are people who are trying to buy serial killer memorabilia for their museums. Like there are just so many different types of characters. It's so interesting. A cop that had stopped him one time, and you get the sense of like what he might have written back based off of the person's next letter, but you just never know. There's like some ambiguity there. But I found it so fascinating, and it was not glamorizing true crime serial killer kind of stuff. It was like actually really impactful for me. I think that it was very emotionally written, and but also very just like such a quick read because every chapter was only a page or two of whatever letter they had sent to him in prison. So such a fast, entertaining, but also like very emotionally, thematically rich book. I highly recommend it if you read horror at all. And then the last one was a book that really grew on me as I read William Gibson's Neuromancer. This is a book that I had heard about forever, but really did not know the actual meat of the story, which is, you know, kind of that this guy, he was a drug addict, but then he gets mycotoxins installed inside his body, and he has to do these heists for this person so that they will take the toxins out of him and he won't die. That's like kind of the plot of the story, but there's so much more going on. First of all, that this was written in the early 80s before there was internet, other than like government network kind of things. There was no home internet for sure, and William Gibson was not even like a big computer guy. Like, but there was so much that is almost like prophetic about this book in terms of the internet, how we interact on the internet, about virtual reality, about AI, about just like so much technology. Better than predicting what technology would actually come, better than any other sci-fi writer, but also how capitalism would respond to that. That it is not like this beautiful futuristic world, but it's also not this like like gritty cyberpunk world, kind of like a Blade Runner, like neon light kind of thing. More just like a husk of itself. Like there's nothing new in this world. They've invented everything and it got old fast, and like that is like not what money went towards doing, was like making flying cars and like building beautiful buildings. Like even the rich people in this book are like living in like kind of crumbling mansions out on a spaceship. Like it is not a beautiful world at all. I will say, like, I wasn't sure that I was like getting it for like the first part of it. Like the way that it is written is so interesting, where it'll just like breeze through action scenes or important information, and but then you will get like 5 pages of dialogue back and forth, but then they will like travel somewhere that's like very far away, and that'll happen very quickly. Like the pacing is interesting, something that I wasn't really loving at first, but it ended up like the sum of it, as soon as I finish it, I was like, oh, now I want to reread it because now I get it. And now I understand all these characters, and now I understand this world. And I think I would enjoy it. I think that there are so many people who reread this book pretty frequently. And I could definitely see myself rereading it, even though like I wasn't hooked on it from the first page by any means. It was probably like 200 pages into the book before I was like really getting it. And I loved it so much more after I'd read it than I really enjoyed the page to page experience of. But yeah, I think the page to page experience would be much higher now that I've like actually completed it. Something that's really interesting in the way that the cyberspace is written in Neuromancer is that it's not like just a human representation of cyberspace, like something like The Matrix, where it's like, they're inside a computer, but they're still humans walking around. The cyberspace of Neuromancer, which Neuromancer also coined the term cyberspace, is like math arrays and stuff. It's so weird, and like it reminds me almost of something like a Lovecraftian thing. Like listen to this passage and tell me this doesn't sound like Lovecraft. Here he's talking about jacking into the cyberspace. Like he puts on his VR headset and jacks into cyberspace. Nothing, gray void, no matrix, no grid, no cyberspace. The deck was gone. His fingers were, and on the far rim of consciousness, a scurrying, a fleeting impression of something rushing toward him across leagues of black mirror. He tried to scream. Like, I just love this. It's like very horrific in how the cyberspace is written too, very spooky. But yeah, if you want to hear more of my thoughts on Neuromancer, I have a whole podcast episode about this alongside the video game Neuromancer, which is of the same world but a bit different. And yeah, also the live show where me and Trevor talk more about it. And then one of my reading goals for this year was about untrackable media. And so yeah, I think I'll just like talk a little bit about some of the untrackable media I've been reading at the end of these reading wrap-ups. First of all, did you know that you can get a JSTOR free account and read 100 articles a month? 100 articles a day, 100 articles a month, I think, which is a pretty good amount if you are not in university still and you no longer have access to JSTOR and academic articles. This is great. Like you just sign up and you can read articles. I love it. And I will probably be reading many articles on JSTOR for my untrackable media. But this is one that I read kind of in conjunction with reading Neuromancer, was called Adaptation, Extension, Transmedia by Henry Jenkins. And this is from the Lit and Film Quarterly Spring 2017 edition. And this article was about him talking about if action figures are transmedia properties. And if you're not familiar with the term like transmedia narratives, transmedia storytelling, it is exactly what it sounds like. You can tell a story in different ways. So there could be a film of something and a book of something, and they're talking about the same world. Something like Star Wars has movies and there's also books, and they're talking about the same world, but through different media types. So you can have film, books, video games, TV shows, they can all talk about a world in different ways. And so he's talking about in this one, if action figures can be a transmedia property and using action figures as an authoring tool. If you have your specific Frodo Fellowship of the Ring action figure talking with your Darth Vader, talking with your Sailor Moon, and you were authoring a new property with all of them together through role play, whatever, is that transmedia and making new stories that way. I think to a lot of people, my age and younger, this is like obviously, yeah, like I remember being on the Neopets forums and we would have our Neopets in role playing threads with like the characters from Holes or the characters from Harry Potter back then, or Lord of the Rings. And that was just like, of course we can tell stories with these multiple properties together and tell new stories as authoring tools. He's also talking in this article about Derrida's archontic principle, that there is a drive within an archive that seeks to always produce more archive and to enlarge itself. And both adaptation and extension are different forms of archontic principle. So it is this reiteration, and something that I've been like interested in lately. Like, I don't think I actually talked about Gatsby on this channel that much. It's a retelling by Jane Crowther, which is like a Gen Z gender swapped telling of the Great Gatsby, and how I probably would have been like negative on this type of thing at some time, but I've really grown on the idea of like reiterating stories. And as long as like the retelling is like interesting, that I don't necessarily need it to be transformative in order to find stuff worthwhile anymore. That I think that there is just like some value in like something that has historically been true of humans, oral storytellers, to just reiterate the same story over and over again. So transformation is not as much an issue for me as it used to be. So yeah, I'm sure I had other untrackable reading in the month, but that is the one that I took notes on. And so I think that's just what I'll continue to do, is just like take notes on articles that I've been reading. But as far as my other goals, 0 big books or Aussie books this month, unfortunately, 1 nonfiction, and 3 physical books. So I think I'm making fairly good progress towards my reading goals, as long as I get to all of them at some point in this year. But thank you so much for joining me. This was a longer video, even though it's only 8 books, but I felt like I had plenty to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed listening. I'd love to hear about what you were reading in January, especially the types of like untrackable media that you're reading. That is definitely going to be a theme for me this year. And yeah, I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.